A barefoot girl challenges a music star in a duel that goes beyond sound and reaches the soul. What begins as humiliation turns into a lesson of truth, forgiveness, and the power of art. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The National Accordion Festival of Willow Creek was buzzing with anticipation. The Municipal Theatre, a historic building on the banks of the Willow Creek River, was packed for the final phase of the New Talents of the Southern States competition. In the makeshift dressing room, little Mariana Rivers, just 8 years old, nervously adjusted the simple printed cotton dress her mother, Mrs. Clara, had bought at the neighborhood market especially for that night. "Calm down, my dear. You're going to be amazing," Mrs. Clara whispered, braiding the girl's curly hair. Her calloused hands, from so much work in domestic service, betrayed the daily struggle to raise her daughter alone since Mr. Anthony, a bar accordionist and fruit processing plant worker in his spare time, had passed away in a tragic work accident due to company negligence 2 years ago. Mariana clutched an old accordion to her chest, patched with electrical tape in several places. The instrument, inherited from Mr. Anthony, was disproportionate to her slender body, but in the girl's hands, it came alive in a way few could achieve with new and expensive instruments. "Mummy, what if Aurelius Dawson doesn't like my sound?" Mariana asked with teary eyes. Aurelius Dawson was the great star of contemporary Southern States music. A virtuous accordionist with classical training, he had conquered the United States and the world with fusions of Faurot, jazz, and classical music. Owner of impeccable technique, he was known as much for his talent as for his difficult temperament and inflated ego. That night, he was the president of the festival jury and attracted more attention than the contestants themselves. "Your father always said that true music lives in the broken corners, my dear." "It doesn't matter what that self-important man thinks," Clara replied, hiding her own apprehension. The dressing room door opened abruptly, and the announcer called, "Next contestant, Mariana Rivers. To the stage in 2 minutes!" In the corridor, they crossed paths with Aurelius Dawson himself, impeccably dressed in a white linen suit and carrying an imported accordion, gleaming under the lights. He looked down at Mariana and her patched accordion and did not disguise a smirk. "What do we have here? A real competitor or a circus act?" he commented loudly to his entourage, who laughed uncomfortably. "Where did you get that instrument, girl?" "From the junkyard." Before Clara could intervene, the festival director approached, visibly embarrassed. "Mr. Dawson, this is Mariana Rivers, our youngest finalist. She's passed 3 elimination rounds to get here." Aurelius raised his eyebrows, surprised. He looked at the girl again, who now stared at him with determination, despite her suppressed tears. "A barefoot child with a falling-apart accordion is a finalist in this festival. What's happening to the level of our music?" He turned directly to Mariana. "Look here, girl. Since you've come this far, let's make a deal. A challenge, actually." A tense silence settled in the corridor. Clara squeezed her daughter's shoulders protectively. "What challenge?" Mariana asked in a firm voice, surprising everyone. "An accordion duel," Aurelius proposed with a calculated smile. "You and I, here and now, before everyone. If you surpass me, and which is absolutely impossible, I will personally pay for 5 years of studies at the best music school in the country for you." Aurelius's entourage exchanged worried glances. The festival director seemed lost, not knowing how to react to the unexpected situation. "And if I lose?" Mariana asked, still holding his gaze. "If you lose, which is obvious, you will publicly admit that dreams don't pay bills, and you'll give up this nonsense of being a musician. You'll go back to regular school and follow a more realistic path for someone of your condition." He looked at the girl's worn sandals. "This is absurd," Clara protested. "She's just a child." "A child who entered an adult competition," Aurelius retorted, relentless. "So do you accept the challenge, little accordionist?" Against all protests, including her mother's own, Mariana nodded. "I accept." The announcer, who had watched everything open-mouthed, ran to the stage to announce the change in the program. Instead of the regular presentation, the audience would have an unexpected duel between the great master Aurelius Dawson and the festival's youngest contestant. When Mariana stepped onto the stage, holding her patched accordion, There was a mixture of laughter and oaths of compassion in the audience. Clara positioned herself in the front row, anguished, while Aurelius took center stage with his imposing presence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Aurelius announced into the microphone, "before you hear this young contestant, allow me to show you how this instrument is truly played." He then performed a virtuosic version of White Wing, blending elements of jazz and classical music, with impressive speed and technical embellishments that drew enthusiastic applause from the audience. His mastery of the instrument was absolute, his technique impeccable. Upon finishing, bows were made, and a superior smile formed on his lips as he passed the accordion to Mariana. The girl seemed tiny in the center of that immense stage. "Your turn, little one," he said into the microphone, visibly pleased with himself. Mariana closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of her father and his words. "Accordion isn't about showing off technique, daughter. It's about telling a story. And a true story comes from the broken corners of life." She then began to play. Not a technically challenging piece like Aurelius's, but a simple, profound baillot that her father used to play on moonlit nights in their backyard. The sound of the old accordion was rough, but of a purity that touched the heart. Her small fingers danced across the instrument with an intuition not learned in schools. The entire theater fell silent. Mariana's music did not impress with technique, but with the raw truth that emanated from it. It was as if each note told the story of that family, of the hard-working father, the warrior mother, the dreaming girl. When the last note sounded, there was a moment of absolute silence, before a wave of applause erupted, much more intense than that received by Aurelius. Backstage, an elderly woman with white hair watched with tears in her eyes. Mrs. Juniper, the town's former music teacher, recognized something familiar and powerful in that performance, something she hadn't heard in many years. Mrs. Juniper couldn't contain the tremor in her hands as she watched little Mariana leave the stage, cheered by the audience. That style, that way of feeling the baillot, the way the girl's fingers seemed to converse with the instrument, everything recalled a man she had known decades ago, an accordion genius who played with his soul laid bare, Master Janus. By a coincidence that life sometimes weaves, Master Janus was none other than Aurelius Dawson's father. Known as the accordion poet, Janus had been a legend in the southern states, not for refined technique or fame, but for his ability to transform the instrument into a channel for human stories. In the last years of his life, disillusioned with the music industry, he dedicated himself to teaching children in underprivileged communities for free, rejecting the spotlights that so tempted his son. Mrs. Juniper walked briskly to the dressing room, where Mariana and her mother were discreetly celebrating the success of the performance. She knocked on the door with trembling fingers. "Excuse me," she said upon entering. "My name is Juniper Alves. I'm a retired music teacher. I need to ask something. Who taught you to play like that, girl?" Clara, still emotional from her daughter's performance, answered before Mariana could open her mouth. "It was her father, Mr. Anthony. He is no longer with us. He passed away 2 years ago." Mrs. Juniper sat down as if her legs could no longer bear the weight of the revelation forming in her mind. "And this Anthony, who did he learn from?" It was Mariana who answered this time, her eyes shining with the memory of her father. "Daddy said he learned from an old master who played at the markets under the mango trees, a man who charged nothing, only asked that we pass the knowledge on. His name was Janus," Mrs. Juniper completed, bringing her hands to her face. "Master Janus," the name startled Clara. "Yes, that's him." "How do you know, ma'am?" "Because Janus was Aurelius Dawson's father." The revelation struck like lightning in the small dressing room. Mariana's eyes widened, unable to process what she had just heard. At that moment, the door burst open. It was Aurelius, accompanied by the festival director and 2 judges. His face was tense, a mixture of anger and wounded pride. "This isn't over," he declared without greeting anyone. "The jury's vote was split. 2 votes for me, 2 for you." He pointed at Mariana as if she were guilty of some crime. "This constitutes a technical tie, which, according to the regulations, requires a second elimination round." The festival director, visibly embarrassed, tried to smooth things over. Mr. Dawson insisted on consulting the regulations, and indeed there is such a clause for ties in the final. Clara stood up, indignant. "This is absurd. My daughter has already shown her worth." Everyone in the theatre saw it. Rules are rules, Aurelius retorted with a cold smile. The second round will take place in 1 week. The piece chosen by the jury is— Let me guess, Mrs. Juniper interrupted, rising with difficulty from her chair. You chose the most technically difficult piece for a child to master in a few days. Aurelius's gaze fixed on Mrs. Juniper, narrowing in recognition. Professor Juniper, long time no see. I see you're still meddling where you're not wanted. And I see you're still running from true music, Aurelius, she countered without hesitation, exactly as you ran from your father. A heavy silence fell over the dressing room. The judges exchanged uncomfortable glances. Aurelius took a deep breath, visibly controlling his irritation. The chosen piece is Ode to the Cowboy, in Hermeto Pascal's version with variations, he finally announced. A classic of the Brazilian accordion repertoire with passages of extreme technical difficulty. I'm sure it will be educational for the young contestant. Mariana looked at her mother, confused. She had never heard of that song. Clara in turn paled. She knew the piece by name and knew it was considered one of the greatest challenges for professional accordionists. This is cruel, Clara murmured. You know it's impossible for a child. If she's in the big festival, she should play like the big ones, Aurelius cut in, unless she wants to give up now and spare us all this unnecessary effort. Mrs. Juniper stepped forward, placing herself between Aurelius and the family. She won't give up, and I will teach her myself. Aurelius laughed disdainfully. You, ma'am. With all due respect, Professor, you can barely hold an accordion these days with that arthritis. How do you intend to teach a piece of that caliber? In a week. The same way your father taught me to teach, Aurelius, with the heart, not just with the fingers. The mention of his father seemed to hit Aurelius like a physical blow. He recoiled a step, and something in his eyes wavered for a moment. Do as you wish, he finally said, regaining his composure. In 1 week on the same stage, we will decide this once and for all. After Aurelius and his entourage left, the dressing room fell silent. Mariana approached Mrs. Juniper, her eyes full of questions. Did you really know the angry man's father? And did you know my father too? No, dear, I didn't know your father, but I knew the master who taught him. Mrs. Juniper held Mariana's small hands in hers. And now I understand why you play like that. It's as if Janus is still alive through your notes. Clara, worried, intervened. But what are we going to do, Mrs. Juniper? That music is impossible for Mariana to learn in a week, and I need to work. I can't take her to lessons. I will come to you, the elderly lady decided. Where do you live? In the Willow Creek Gardens housing project, on the outskirts. It's far and distance doesn't matter. What matters is that this girl carries something precious, something I thought was lost when Janus passed away, the true soul of Foro. That same night, while Mariana slept exhausted after all the day's excitement, Clara and Mrs. Juniper talked in low voices in the small kitchen of the apartment. Anthony talked a lot about this Master Janus, Clara confessed, serving the teacher a simple coffee. He said it was he who taught him that music isn't a competition, it's a conversation with the soul. Exactly what Janus always said, Mrs. Juniper confirmed, emotional. And that's why Aurelius is so disturbed. He heard in your daughter's accordion the echo of the father he could never understand or accept. Why? Mrs. Juniper sighed, taking a sip of coffee. Janus was a simple but profound man. He openly criticized the music industry, stardom, technique for technique's sake. When Aurelius started to succeed, following exactly the path his father condemned, the two broke off relations. Janus spent his last years teaching children in squares and markets, while watching from afar his son become an empty star, and Aurelius never reconciled with his father. Janus passed away before that could happen, and I think it's that open wound that bled today, when he heard in your daughter's accordion what he abandoned so long ago, the truth of music. Clara wiped away a stubborn tear. What do we do now, Mrs. Juniper? Mariana can't learn that piece in a week. It's technically impossible. Nothing is impossible when you have the right soul, my dear, the teacher replied with a serene smile. Starting tomorrow, we will work hard. I will teach Mariana to breathe as Janus taught, to understand that fingers are just messengers of the heart. And if it's not enough, then we will have done our best. And that, my dear, is already a greater victory than any trophy Aurelius Dawson can display on his shelf. The week that followed was one of absolute dedication. Mrs. Clara managed to switch her shift at the cleaning company where she worked, moving to the night shift so she could accompany her daughter's studies during the day. She slept only 4 hours a night but was present for every advance, every frustration Mariana experienced. The small apartment in the Willow Creek Gardens housing project transformed into an intensive music school. Mrs. Juniper arrived every day at 8 in the morning, bringing with her an old folder with yellowed sheet music and a tape recorder. With cassette tapes preserved for decades, recordings of Master Janus's lessons. Before playing, we need to learn to breathe, Mrs. Juniper explained on the first day to Mariana's surprise. The girl, eager to master the chords of the difficult Ode to the Cowboy, didn't understand why she was doing breathing exercises instead of practicing notes. The accordion is like our external lung, the elderly woman patiently explained. It breathes with us, suffers with us, laughs with us. Master Janus used to say that before mastering the bellows, one must master the air within oneself. The neighbors in the complex, initially bothered by the constant sound of the accordion, soon succumbed to the dedication of the little musician. Mr. Gerald, the superintendent, who had complained on the first day, now stopped by to listen for a bit and bring tapioca cookies his wife prepared. "That girl has a gift," he commented to Mrs. Clara on the third day. "She makes us remember the good things, you know." On the fourth day, Mariana faced her first major crisis. The piece had a section of rapid staccatos that required advanced coordination between both hands. After 2 hours of unsuccessful attempts, the girl threw herself onto the sofa in tears. "I can't, Mrs. Juniper. My hands are too small, my fingers can't reach." Mrs. Juniper didn't console her immediately. Instead, she placed one of the tapes in the old recorder and pressed play. Master Janus's deep, warm voice filled the room. "The size of the fingers doesn't matter. What matters is the size of the feeling. When the heart reaches, the fingers always follow." Mariana fell silent, hypnotized by the voice coming from that magical box. "Is that Aurelius's father?" she asked, drying her tears. "Yes, and also the master who taught your father. Listen to what he has to say." The recording continued, with instructions on how to break difficult passages into small parts, mastering each section before putting them together. "It's like building a house," the master's voice said, "brick by brick, with patience and respect for the timing of things." Inspired by the wisdom of that man she had never met personally, but whose teachings had reached her through generations, Mariana resumed practice with renewed determination. Mrs. Juniper divided the piece into 4-bar sections, and the girl began to study each part in isolation. "Don't try to be perfect," the teacher advised. "Try to be true." On the 5th day, an unforeseen event almost jeopardized everything. The bellows of Mariana's old accordion, already patched several times, tore at a point impossible to repair with tape. The instrument emitted a hiss of escaping air that completely compromised the sound. "Now what?" Mrs. Clara despaired. "We don't have money for another accordion." Mrs. Juniper pondered for a few moments. "I have an accordion stored away," she finally said. "It belonged to my late husband. It's not a professional instrument, but it's in good condition." "Would you lend it to Mariana?" Clara asked, emotional. "No, my dear. I would give it as a gift. But," and here Mrs. Juniper's expression became serious, "there's a problem. It's an 8-bass accordion, simpler than this 80-bass one Mariana uses. Ode to the Cowboy requires a large accordion with all the basses." Despair once again surrounded the small family. Without a suitable instrument, there was no way to compete. It was at this moment that Mr. Gerald, who was listening to the conversation from the half-open door, cleared his throat to announce his presence. "Excuse me," he said, entering timidly. "I couldn't help but overhear your problem. I have a nephew who plays in the Willow Creek Accordion Orchestra. I'll call him right now." 3 hours later, Mr. Gerald's nephew, Thaddeus, arrived at the housing project with a red and white Todeschini accordion, not as luxurious as Aurelius's, but perfectly suitable for performing the piece. It's borrowed. Mind you, he explained to Mariana, who looked at the instrument in wonder. From the municipal school where I teach. Take good care of it until Monday. With the new instrument, Mariana progressed rapidly. On the 6th day, she could already play the entire piece, albeit with a few flaws in the more complex sections. That night, Mrs. Juniper had a long conversation with Clara in the kitchen, while Mariana slept exhausted. She's evolved a lot, but still. The teacher hesitated. Technically, it will be difficult to compete with Aurelius. He studied this piece. For years, knows every detail. Clara looked out the kitchen window at the starry sky of Willow Creek. So we don't have a chance? In technique, perhaps not, Mrs. Juniper admitted. But in soul? In soul, your daughter is already a winner like few I've ever seen. On the 7th day, the last before the final round, a surprise awaited in the apartment. Thaddeus, Mr. Gerald's nephew, brought 2 colleagues from the accordion orchestra with him. We came to help with the dress rehearsal, he announced, smiling. I'm on bass drum, John's on triangle, and Madeline's on tambourine. We'll give you a southern trio backing so you can get used to playing with accompaniment. The small room became even more cramped, but the sound that came from there that afternoon was magical. Mariana, initially shy with the professional musicians, soon loosened up, discovering that it was much easier to find the rhythm and expression when there were other instruments dialoguing with her accordion. "That's it, girl," exclaimed Madeline, vibrant, when Mariana perfectly completed a difficult passage. "You have rhythm in your blood." At the end of the day, when everyone had left, Mariana sat next to Mrs. Juniper on the worn sofa. "Mrs. Juniper, what happened to Master Janus? Why did he and his son disagree so much?" The elderly woman sighed, caressing the girl's hair. Janus believed that music had a higher purpose than fame. He played to heal souls, to tell people stories, to keep alive the memory of those who came before. When Aurelius began to succeed, he changed his style, playing more and more to impress and less to feel. The two argued a lot. And what did Master Janus say? He would say, "Son, you have perfect technique, but you've lost the truth of music. You're playing with your fingers, not with your heart." Mariana reflected on those words for a few moments. "Mrs. Juniper, tomorrow I won't try to play like Aurelius. I'll play my way." "And what is your way, dear?" "The way my father taught me. The way Mr. Janus taught him. Telling stories, not just playing notes." Mrs. Juniper hugged the girl, her eyes moist. That's exactly what Janus would wish to hear. The next morning, the day of the grand final round, an unexpected figure appeared at the apartment door. It was an elderly woman with white hair, an austere face but kind eyes. She must have been around 75 and wore a simple but elegant printed dress. "Good morning," she said when Clara answered. "My name is Mercy Dawson. I am Janus's sister and Aurelius's aunt. I came to see the girl who plays like my brother." Mrs. Juniper, who was in the living room helping Mariana with the last preparations, immediately recognized the visitor. "Mercy." "Long time no see." The two elderly women embraced with the familiarity of those who had shared decades of history. "How did you hear about the girl?" Juniper asked. "Thaddeus is my neighbor in Juniper Falls. He told me everything last night. He said this girl has the same gift Janus had. I needed to see it with my own eyes." Mariana was called to the living room, where she played a section of the piece for Mercy. The elderly woman listened in silence, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "It's him," she murmured when the last note sounded. "It's Janus living through these notes." Then, addressing Mariana directly, "My dear, today is not just a competition you will face. It's a reckoning with the past. My nephew needs to hear what you have to say with this music." "And what do I have to say, ma'am?" Mariana asked, confused. "That true music never dies, that it passes from master to apprentice, from father to child, from heart to heart, and that it's never too late to return to the path of truth." Meanwhile, in Willow Creek's most luxurious hotel, Aurelius Dawson was obsessively practicing Ode to the Cowboy. His fingers flew over the accordion's keyboard with mathematical precision. Not a single note was out of place, not a single chord imprecise. The Municipal Theatre of Willow Creek was even more packed than the previous week. News of the duel between the renowned Aurelius Dawson and the young accordion prodigy had spread like wildfire throughout the Willow Creek Valley region. People who had never set foot in a theatre queued on the sidewalk, hoping to get a seat, even if it meant standing. Backstage, Mariana prepared with Mrs. Juniper's help. The girl wore the same simple dress from her first performance. There was no money for another, but now she wore a new pair of sandals, a last-minute gift from Mr. Gerald and the other residents of the housing project, who had chipped in. "I'm scared, Mrs. Juniper," Mariana confessed, clutching the borrowed accordion to her chest. "It's normal to be scared, my dear. Even great masters get butterflies before going on stage. What if I make a mistake? What if my fingers stumble on the difficult notes?" Mrs. Juniper held the girl's face between her wrinkled hands. "Listen closely, Mariana. You will miss some notes, yes. It's almost certain. But don't forget, Master Janus always said that perfect notes without emotion are like a body without a soul. What matters is not technical perfection. It's the truth you put into every note." In the next dressing room, Aurelius Dawson oiled the joints of his incredibly expensive Italian accordion, an instrument few in the United States could afford to own. He wore an impeccable, tailor-made white linen suit and imported shoes. His face, however, did not show the usual confidence. There was something troubled in his gaze, as if an internal storm afflicted him. "It's time," his personal assistant announced. "The house is packed." "I want everything recorded," Aurelius ordered, without looking at the assistant. "Every second. Tonight will go down in history as the lesson Willow Creek will never forget." When the two contestants were called to the stage, the contrast could not have been more evident. On one side, the acclaimed artist, elegant and imposing with his luxury instrument. On the other, the small girl in a simple dress, braided hair and large eyes, holding a borrowed accordion which, though of good quality, was no match for Aurelius's instrument. The announcer explained the rules. Each would play Ode to the Cowboy in their own way. The jury, composed of 5 regional music specialists, would evaluate technique, expressiveness, and fidelity to the spirit of the work. Aurelius would perform first. In the front rows, Mrs. Clara held Mercy Dawson's hand tightly. The two women, though they had just met, shared the same apprehension and hope. Mrs. Juniper had taken her place among the judges, after a special request from the festival director, who recognized her undeniable authority in Southern States music. Aurelius positioned himself center stage, adjusted the microphone, and without any introduction, began to play. What followed was an impressive display of technical virtuosity. His fingers moved with speed and precision over the buttons, extracting complex chords and embellishments from the accordion that few in the world could reproduce. Aurelius's Ode to the Cowboy was impeccable, crystalline, technically irreproachable, and, to the most sensitive ears, strangely cold. The audience, captivated by the display of skill, applauded enthusiastically when he finished. There was general admiration for the technique, but it lacked that spine-tingling sensation that only true music evokes. Then it was Mariana's turn. The girl walked shyly to the center of the stage, adjusted the accordion on her lap. The instrument still seemed too large for her small body, and looked at the audience with wide, apprehensive eyes. She began to play, and already in the first measures, it was clear that her interpretation would be very different from Aurelius's. Where he had been technical and meticulous, she was organic and fluid. Her version was slower, more contemplative, as if each note told a story. In the most difficult passages, Mariana's fingers occasionally stumbled. In one particularly complex section, she completely missed a chord, making an involuntary grimace of frustration. The audience, completely immersed in the emotion of the music, suffered along with her. But then something extraordinary happened. Instead of trying to disguise the error, Mariana took a deep breath, remembered Mrs. Juniper's lessons, and decided to abandon the pursuit of technical perfection. She began to play not Ode to the Cowboy, as it was written in the score, but Ode to the Cowboy as she felt it, a tribute not only to the cowboys of the backlands, but to all who, like her father, worked with dignity and simplicity, living with little but with honor. The music transformed in her hands. It was no longer a piece of virtuosity, but a human story, a lament and at the same time a celebration of simple life. The wrong notes no longer mattered. What mattered was the raw and moving truth that emerged from that accordion. When the last note sounded, there was a moment of absolute silence in the theater. Then, like a wave, The entire audience rose in emotional applause. Many openly wept, touched by something that transcended mere musical appreciation. It was at that moment that Mercy Dawson, Master Janus's sister, rose from her seat and walked determinedly to the stage. The audience, recognizing her, made way. At 75, Mercy was a known figure in Juniper Falls and Willow Creek, the guardian of her famous brother's memory. "One moment, please," she said, taking the microphone. Her voice, despite her age, had the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "Before the jury deliberates, I have something to say." A murmur ran through the theatre. Aurelius, who was at the side of the stage, paled at the sight of his aunt. "My nephew, Aurelius Dawson, is using rules and formalities to crush a child's talent," Mercy declared, without mincing words. "It's the same attitude that alienated him from his father. My brother Janus, the true master of the accordion, who left this world with a broken heart at seeing his son turn art into an empty spectacle." A buzz spread through the audience. Aurelius stepped forward, visibly disturbed. "Aunt, this is not the time or place to—" "It is exactly the time and place, Aurelius," Mercy interrupted, relentless. "This girl," and she pointed to Mariana, who watched everything open-mouthed, "plays like Janus played. She never met him, but she learned from her father, Anthony, who was one of Janus's last students in the free lessons he gave at the markets." The revelation caused a stir. Many of the elders in the audience had known Master Janus and his famous lessons at the open-air markets of Juniper Falls and Willow Creek. "What you heard today," Mercy continued, "was not just a duel of technique against emotion. It was the meeting of two worldviews that my brother tried in vain to reconcile in life." She then turned to her nephew, "Aurelius, your father's last words were of forgiveness and an invitation for you to return to true music, the kind that doesn't impress but connects, that doesn't display but reveals." Aurelius was now completely pale, as if he had seen a ghost. Perhaps in a way that was exactly what was happening, the ghost of his father, and of everything he had abandoned in the name of success. "Anthony, this girl's father," Mercy continued, pointing to Mariana, "was one of the few students in whom Janus saw true talent. He used to say, 'This young man understands that the accordion is not an instrument, it is an extension of the soul.'" Aurelius staggered slightly and had to lean on a nearby chair. His face was a mask of conflicting emotions, wounded pride, anger, but also, surprisingly, a shadow of relief, as if a weight was being lifted from his shoulders. Mercy then addressed Mariana. "My dear, please finish your performance, but don't play what my nephew demanded. Play the song your father learned from Janus, the same one he must have taught you, the song of the father who is gone, but left his music as a legacy." Mariana looked at Mrs. Clara, confused. Her mother nodded, tears in her eyes. "The Mango Tree song, daughter," Clara whispered, loud enough for Mariana to hear. "The one your father said cured all ills." The girl smiled, immediately recognizing the music. It was a simple bayo, almost a lullaby that her father played on nights when she couldn't sleep. She never knew it had a special name or story. Without further words, she began to play. The simple yet deeply emotional melody flowed from the accordion like crystal-clear water. It was a music of consolation and hope, the kind of song that crosses generations carrying the same healing power. As the bayo melody filled the theatre, something extraordinary happened. Aurelius Dawson, the great music star who had never shown weakness in public, began to cry. These were not restrained tears, the kind disguised with a cough or a forced smile. They were deep, visceral sobs that seemed to come from a place long sealed in his chest. The audience watched in respectful silence the transformation occurring before their eyes. The arrogant and untouchable man was unraveling layer by layer as the simple music of a child brought back memories he thought buried. Aurelius walked slowly to the edge of the stage, as if in a trance. His eyes were fixed on Mariana, but it was evident that he saw something or someone beyond her. "This music," he murmured, his voice amplified by the microphone he still held. "My father composed it the day I was born. He called it Certain Dawn. He once told me he wrote it thinking about what it would be like to teach me to play the accordion." Aurelius couldn't finish the sentence. He knelt on the stage a few steps from Mariana, letting the tears flow freely. The girl, without interrupting the music, approached him and continued playing, now for him, just for him. When the last note sounded, The theatre remained silent. Aurelius slowly got up, picked up the microphone he had dropped, and with a choked but firm voice said, "I declare Mariana Rivers the winner of this duel, from the very first note she played last week." He paused, taking a deep breath. In truth, there is no duel when only one side possesses the truth. And the truth, ladies and gentlemen, is in the hands of this girl. The audience erupted in applause. Mrs. Clara ran onto the stage to hug her daughter, soon followed by Mrs. Juniper. Mercy Dawson approached her nephew, and after a moment of hesitation, the two embraced, breaking decades of estrangement. "I keep my promise," Aurelius continued when the audience calmed down. "Mariana will have a full scholarship to the best music school in the country for as long as needed. But I want to go further." He paused again, as if making a decision at that exact moment. "I hereby announce the creation of the Master Janus Foundation, in honor of my father, to offer free music lessons to underprivileged children. And I invite Mrs. Juniper Alves to coordinate the educational program." New applause erupted, even more enthusiastic. Mrs. Juniper, visibly moved, nodded in acceptance. "And where will this foundation be?" someone from the audience asked. Aurelius hesitated, but it was Mercy who replied, "In the old processing plant warehouse by the river. The same one where Anthony, Mariana's father, worked before the accident. We will transform a place of pain into a space of hope." The irony did not go unnoticed by anyone. The same place where Anthony had suffered the accident that took him away would now be dedicated to perpetuating his legacy through music. Clara, upon hearing this, could not contain her tears. The celebration at the theatre extended late into the night. As everyone began to disperse, Aurelius approached Mariana and her mother shyly. "May I speak with you for a moment?" he asked without his usual arrogance. Clara, still distrustful despite the evident transformation, cautiously assented. "I want to apologize," he began, visibly uncomfortable, "for the way I treated your daughter, for what I said about dreams not paying bills, for everything." "The important thing is that you recognized your mistake," Clara replied, with the dignity of someone who had fought hard battles. "There's something else," Aurelius continued, now addressing Mariana. "That accordion you used on the first day, the one patched with tape, was it your father's?" Mariana nodded. "May I see it?" "Fix it, perhaps." "It's completely broken," Clara explained. "The bellows are completely torn. Even so, perhaps I can do something for it." The next morning, Aurelius appeared at the Willow Creek Gardens housing project, causing a stir among the residents. He came without his usual entourage, driving a simple car himself, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, a look no one had seen him wear in years. He brought with him Mariana's old accordion, completely restored by a luthier who had worked all night. But that wasn't all. In the trunk of the car were two large boxes. "This is for you," he said, handing the smaller one to Mariana. Inside was a new accordion, appropriately sized for a child, of excellent quality without being ostentatious. "And this," he continued, showing the second box to Clara, "contains the scholarship contract already signed. And something else." He hesitated before continuing. "I know no money replaces a father, but I would like you to accept this amount as compensation for the time Mariana will spend studying instead of helping at home." Clara opened the box and found an envelope with a sum she had never imagined seeing together. "I can't accept this," she said, trying to return the envelope. "It's not charity, Mrs. Clara. It's an investment in the future of American music. And, if I may say, it's also a way to thank you for what your daughter did for me yesterday." "What did she do?" Aurelius looked at the horizon, his eyes welling up again. "She gave me my father back, and in a way she gave me myself back." 3 months later, the Master Janus Foundation opened its doors in the old factory warehouse, now completely renovated. The space had acoustically treated classrooms, a small auditorium, a recording studio, and a music library. At the entrance, a large panel displayed photos of Master Janus teaching children at markets, alongside a photo of Anthony with his accordion, smiling under a mango tree. Hundreds of children from Willow Creek, Juniper Falls, and the surrounding areas arrived for the inaugural classes, some with new instruments, others with patched or improvised ones, all received with the same respect and enthusiasm by the Foundation's team. Mrs. Juniper coordinated the educational program. Mercy handled the administration, and Clara, who had finally been able to leave her exhausting job at the cleaning company, oversaw the facility's infrastructure. Mariana divided her time between classes at the music school in Charleston, South Carolina, where she now studied, and weekends in Willow Creek, where she helped teach the younger children. As for Aurelius, his transformation surprised the United States. He exchanged his expensive accordion for a simpler, almost vintage instrument, and began to study the roots of Southern states music again. Listening to old recordings of his father, rediscovering the joy of playing without the pressure to impress, he began to feel music again as he had at the beginning of his career. At the Foundation's inauguration ceremony, he took the stage not as the star of the night, but as one musician among many. When he picked up the microphone, there was a humility in his voice that no one recognized from the old Aurelius. This foundation, he began, celebrates not only the memory of two great men, my father Janus and Anthony, Mariana's father. It celebrates the continuity of life through music, the way a song can cross generations, connecting people who never met personally. He paused, searching for the right words. Many ask me why I abandoned international stages, millionaire contracts, to dedicate myself to a foundation in Willow Creek. The answer is simple, because here I found what I had lost a long time ago, the true purpose of music. He then looked at Mariana by his side. This talented young woman, whom I met under circumstances I'm not proud to remember, composed a piece especially for tonight. It's called Accordion's Conversation, and I think the title says it all. It's not a competition, it's not a display, it's a dialogue. Aurelius picked up his accordion, no longer the expensive instrument of old, but a Portuguese accordion with a warm timbre and its own personality. Mariana positioned herself with her own accordion, now perfectly suited to her size. The music began with an Aurelius solo, a melancholic melody evoking the dawn in the backlands. Mariana responded with a complementary, lighter theme, as if the initial sadness found solace. The two instrumental voices intertwined, separated, sought each other again, telling a story without words that everyone understood. It was no longer the master and the student, the star and the poor child, the adult and the girl. They were two musicians, two artists on equal footing, sharing not just notes but stories, memories, hopes. When the last note sounded, there was a moment of reverent silence before the audience erupted in applause. Many openly wept, touched by the beauty of the moment and the story they knew, the journey of Aurelius and Mariana, from adversaries to partners, from strangers to almost family. Later, as the party was ending and only the closest remained, Clara found Aurelius sitting alone under the mango tree, contemplating the stars. "May I?" she asked, indicating the empty spot beside him on the bench. "Of course, please." Themar sat in silence for a few minutes, the kind of comfortable silence that only exists between people who have overcome their differences. "You know," Aurelius finally began, "sometimes I think about how everything could have been different. If I had maintained my arrogance, if Mariana had given up, if her stubbornness wasn't even greater than my pride." He smiled sideways. "It's funny how fate works." "It wasn't fate," Clara corrected without harshness. "They were choices. Yours, mine, Mariana's, Mrs. Juniper's. Life presents us with crossroads, and the path we tread is made of the decisions we make in those moments." "You're right," he agreed. "And the most important decision I made in recent years was to truly listen to your daughter's music, that night in the theater." "I'm glad you listened," Clara said with a serene smile. "Anthony would be proud, not just of Mariana, but of all this that she helped build." At the opposite end of the patio, Mariana was sitting with a group of younger children, teaching them the first chords on the accordion. Her face shone with the joy of sharing what she knew, exactly as her father and Master Janus had done before her. "True talent never dies," Aurelius observed, following Clara's gaze. "It multiplies, spreads, finds new homes. What Janus planted in me, I wasted for years in vanity. What he planted in Anthony blossomed in Mariana. And now look," he gestured, to the children around the girl, all absorbing not just technique, but the philosophy that accompanied the teaching. Music as truth, imperfection as part of beauty, broken places as a source of genuine art. This is the true legacy, Aurelius concluded. Not the gold records on the wall, not the applause in luxurious theatres. This here, music passing from hand to hand, from heart to heart, like a flame that never goes out. Clara nodded, speechless to express the emotion she felt. Across the patio, Mariana looked at them and smiled, as if intuiting the gist of their conversation. The last performance of the night belonged to the junior trio. Center stage, Mariana performed the same simple baillon she had played a year earlier in the duel that had changed so many lives. But now she was not alone. Dozens of young musicians accompanied her, forming an improvised popular orchestra that transformed the individual baillon into a symphony of hope. Beside her, playing the second voice on the accordion, was Aurelius, no longer the distant and arrogant star, but a musician among musicians, an eternal apprentice of the art he had almost forgotten to love. And so, under the starry sky of Willow Creek, with the Willow Creek River murmuring in the background, and the old mango tree as a witness, music once again proved its power to transform destinies, to heal wounds, and to build bridges where there had once been only abysses. The father's song for his son, returned by a child, continued to transform vanity into humanity and the stage into a home.